I'm sorry, but we can't have another black girl from the ghetto embarrassing this competition. Victoria Mitchell didn't touch the application. She used a pen to flick it off the table, watching it land in a puddle near the entrance. Her eyes locked on 10-year-old Tiana Turner with open disgust. Little black kids from Section 8 don't belong here. This is for real performers from good families, not welfare cases. You people always think showing up is enough. She sprayed hand sanitizer between them like the black child carried disease. Parents turned. Cameras rose. White mothers pulled their daughters closer. Tiana's worn sneakers squelched as she retrieved her soaked application. 8 months of lemonade money, $150 for this moment. For her mama dying of cancer. What she didn't know. One of the judges staring from across the room was the father who abandoned her 11 years ago. And what happened next would make him pay for every single day he ran. 3 weeks earlier, Tiana had been sitting on the cracked linoleum floor of their one-bedroom apartment in Riverside Section 8 housing when she found the flyer. It had fallen out of her mama's purse, bright yellow paper with bold letters. Riverside Community Talent Show. Grand prize, $50,000 plus recording contract, $50,000. The exact number on the hospital bill taped to their refrigerator, the one with red final notice stamps covering nearly every line. The bill for the surgery her mama needed in 3 weeks, or the tumor would become inoperable. Stage 3 breast cancer. The insurance company had already sent their answer. Denied, pre-existing condition. Tiana was 10 years old. She understood what inoperable meant. She'd heard the nurses whispering when they thought she wasn't listening. She'd been singing since she was 3. Teaching herself from YouTube videos while her mama worked double shifts as a hospital janitor and grocery store cashier. At night, when Diane Turner came home too exhausted to speak, Tiana would sing softly until her mama fell asleep. Sometimes Diane would cry while she listened. "Happy tears," she always said. "You got that gift from somewhere special, baby." Tiana sang in the hospital pediatric ward after school while waiting for her mama's shift to end. She sang to the sick children, the ones with no hair, the ones hooked to machines, the ones who couldn't sleep from pain. The nurses started recording her on their phones. Parents asked where her family was, why wasn't she famous, who was training this child. Nobody was training her. She was just trying to help. She'd started posting covers on SoundCloud when she was 7, using her mama's old phone. Just practice recordings, simple and raw, under the name River Kid, because she lived by the river and she was a kid. Over 3 years, strangers found her. 50,000 followers who had no idea River Kid was a poor black girl from Section 8, recording in a hospital stairwell because the echo made her voice sound fuller. But singing in stairwells didn't pay for cancer surgery. The pattern of dismissal had started early. 3rd grade talent show, Tiana had practiced for weeks, was clearly the strongest voice. Mrs. Peterson gave the solo to Victoria Mitchell's daughter instead. "Madison's family has invested so much in her training," Mrs. Peterson explained, not meeting Tiana's eyes. "It wouldn't be fair." Church youth choir, always placed in the back row, never given solos, despite being the only child who could hold harmony. "We need a more uniform sound," the choir director said. Community center showcases. Victoria had blocked her twice before. "We have enough variety this year." Variety. That's what they called black children from Riverside. But this time was different. This time, Tiana wasn't singing for applause or validation. She was singing for her mama's life. She'd saved for 8 months. Every Saturday and Sunday, rain or shine, she set up her lemonade stand on the corner. 50 cents a cup. She did chores for neighbors. Mrs. Chen paid $5 to sweep her porch. Mr. Anderson paid $10 to help sort his recycling. Tiana kept every penny in a piggy bank shaped like a pink elephant, her 4th birthday gift from her mama. Last night, she'd smashed it open with a hammer, counted out $150 in quarters, dollar bills, and crumpled 5s. Smoothed each bill carefully, stacked the quarters in neat piles. Her mama had watched from the doorway, tears streaming down her face, one hand holding the headscarf that covered her thinning hair. "Baby, you don't have to do this." But Tiana did. Because 3 weeks from now, if they didn't have $52,000, her mama would die. The doctors said it clearly. The surgery window was closing. What Tiana didn't know, what her mama had never told her, was that she had a father. That his name was Christopher Hayes. That 11 years ago, when Diane was 20 and pregnant and terrified, Christopher had looked her in the eye and said, "A kid will destroy everything I've worked for. I can't do this." He'd walked away, promised to send money, never did. Diane kept only one photo, Christopher at 24, young and beautiful and about to sign with a major label. She'd torn his face away years ago, but kept the rest. Sometimes she'd look at Tiana practicing in front of their cracked mirror and see his features staring back. The same eyes, the same bone structure, the same God-given voice. "You got that gift from somewhere special," she'd tell Tiana. She just never said where. Christopher Hayes was now a successful A&R executive. He signed artists, built careers, traveled the world finding talent. He'd built everything he wanted. And in 3 days, he would walk into the Riverside Community Center as a guest judge, see a 10-year-old black girl with his eyes and his voice, and realize what his choices had cost. Tiana stood in the parking lot, her soaked application dripping onto her worn sneakers. The puddle water had smeared the ink, turning her carefully printed name into an illegible blur. 8 months of work, 8 months of hope. Gone. Her mama's text message lit up the phone screen. Insurance final denial came. Surgery scheduled day after talent show finals. It's our only shot, baby girl. Mama's praying for our miracle. Attached was a photo of the medical bill. $52,000 in bold red letters. Payment required within 18 days. Tiana's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. She looked back at the community center entrance, where Victoria Mitchell stood visible through the glass doors, laughing with another white parent. Something hardened in Tiana's chest. Something that tasted like every dismissal, every back row assignment, every time someone had looked at her like she was less than. Like she didn't belong. Like her mama's life didn't matter because they were poor and black and from Section 8. She walked back inside. Victoria's smile vanished when she saw her. "Oh, you're still here. Sweetie, I thought we established—" "I have $150. Tiana's voice came out small but steady. She placed the coffee tin on the table. "Entry fee, non-refundable." Victoria's eyebrows rose. "Honey, that's a lot of money for someone in your situation. Are you sure your mother knows you're spending this? This seems like—" "My mama knows." Tiana dumped the tin out. Quarters rolled across the table. Dollar bills fluttered. She started counting, her small fingers moving methodically. Other parents had stopped to watch. Phones came out again. 100, 120, 145, 150. Tiana looked up. "Anna. Dollars. Exactly." Victoria stared at the pile of coins and crumpled bills like they were personally offensive. "Well, how determined?" She pulled out a registration form, a clean one, and stamped it with unnecessary force. "Contestant number 32, performance slot Thursday, 7 p.m., preliminary round." Her smile was razor sharp. "Don't be late. Though between us, honey, you're wasting money you clearly can't afford to lose." Tiana took the form, her hand brushing Victoria's deliberately. Victoria jerked back, reaching immediately for her hand sanitizer. "I'll see you on that stage," Tiana said quietly. She turned to leave, and nearly collided with a man in an expensive suit standing frozen in the doorway. He was staring at her face like he'd seen a ghost. His coffee cup hung suspended in mid-air, forgotten. Tiana mumbled an apology and slipped past him. The man, Christopher Hayes, according to the guest judge badge on his lapel, stood motionless for another 3 seconds. Then he turned to Victoria, his voice carefully controlled. That child. What's her name? Victoria waved dismissively. Nobody important. Contestant 32. Some kid from Riverside. She won't last past preliminaries. They never do. Christopher's throat worked. How old is she? I don't know, 10, maybe? Victoria's tone said she couldn't care less. Does it matter? Christopher didn't answer. He couldn't, because he'd just looked into Diane's eyes staring out from a 10-year-old's face, and his entire carefully constructed world had started to crack. That night, Tiana stood in the bathroom of their apartment, the one working light bulb flickering overhead. She held a marker in her small hand and wrote on her palm, "For Mama." The words looked tiny against her brown skin. From the other room came the sound of her mother coughing, the deep, rattling kind that had started 3 months ago and never stopped. Tiana closed her eyes and pressed her hand against her chest, feeling her heartbeat. Baby, you should be sleeping. Diane stood in the doorway, so thin now that her work uniform hung off her frame. The headscarf she wore had slipped, revealing patches of scalp where chemotherapy had stolen her hair. I'm practicing, Mama. At midnight? The show's in 3 days. Diane moved closer, her steps slow and careful. She took Tiana's hand, studying the marker words. Baby girl, I need you to understand something. Even if you don't win, I'm going to win. But if you don't, Mama, Tiana's voice cracked. I'm going to win. I have to. Diane pulled her daughter close, and they stood like that in the flickering light, holding each other up. When did you grow up so fast? Diane whispered. When you got sick. The words hung between them, true and terrible. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Tiana practiced everywhere. In the hospital stairwell during her mama's shifts, in the empty church sanctuary after school, in the corner of the grocery store parking lot where her mama worked. She sang Rise Up until the lyrics lived in her bones, until she could feel every word in her chest. Carol Bennett, the black nurse who'd been watching Tiana sing to the pediatric patients for years, found her Wednesday evening in the hospital stairwell. Tiana was crying, her voice cracking on the high notes. Baby girl, what's wrong? What if I'm not good enough? What if I mess up? What if... Carol sat down beside her on the cold concrete steps. Listen to me. You know what you have? Anointing. That's not talent you can buy with lessons or coaches. That's a gift from God Himself. She pulled a $20 bill from her purse. It's not much. But when you're up there singing, I want you to remember, you're not just singing for your mama. You're singing for every little black girl who got told she wasn't enough. You hear me? Tiana nodded, unable to speak. Now! Carol stood, pulling Tiana up with her. You walk on that stage tomorrow like you already won, because in my eyes, baby girl, you already have. Thursday evening. The Riverside Community Center auditorium filled with families, the air thick with perfume and nervous energy. 30 contestants crowded the backstage area, some with vocal coaches doing last-minute warm-ups, others with parents adjusting costumes and makeup. Madison Mitchell, contestant number 12, Victoria's 13-year-old daughter, held court in the corner, surrounded by a professional styling team. Her dress probably cost more than Tiana's mama made in 2 months. Tiana sat alone on a folding chair, wearing her $8 thrift store dress, breathing slowly like Carol had taught her. No coach, no entourage, just her and the marker words on her palm that were starting to smudge. The judges sat at a long table facing the stage. Mr. Harrison, the local music teacher with kind eyes, Victoria Mitchell, whose smile looked painted on, and Christopher Hayes, the celebrity A&R executive who hadn't stopped fidgeting since he sat down. Victoria stood to address the contestants backstage, her voice dripping with false sweetness. We have quite the range tonight. Real talent and... Well, everyone gets participation, right? Her eyes landed on Tiana. Some people just need to learn the difference between dreaming and reality. A few parents laughed. Contestant number 12 was called. Madison took the stage in a swirl of expensive fabric and calculated confidence. She performed Somewhere Over the Rainbow with piano accompaniment, backup tracks, and choreographed hand movements that looked rehearsed in a mirror 1,000 times. Technically perfect, emotionally empty. The audience applauded politely. Parents recorded dutifully. Victoria leaned toward the microphone. Stunning. Simply stunning. That's what years of proper training looks like. She held up her scoring card. 9.5. Mr. Harrison nodded. Very polished for her age. 8.0. Christopher Hayes stared at his blank scoring card for a long moment. Good technical control. 8.0. Madison's average. 8.5. Solid. Safe. Forgettable. Contestants 13 through 31 passed in a blur of varying competence. Some good. Some mediocre. None exceptional. The clock ticked toward 7 p.m. Backstage, Victoria paused by Tiana's chair. Still here? You know, stage fright is nothing to be ashamed of, honey. You're just a child. You can forfeit, get half your fee back. Save yourself the embarrassment. Tiana looked up. I'm not embarrassed. Victoria's laugh was sharp. You will be. 7:02 p.m. The coordinator's voice crackled over the backstage speaker. Contestant 32, Tiana Turner. You're up. Carol Bennett, sitting in the third row in her nurse's scrubs, squeezed Diane's hand. Diane looked so frail in her seat, but her eyes were fierce. Tiana stood. Her legs felt like water. The walk from backstage to center stage was maybe 30 feet. It felt like 30 miles. The spotlight hit her face, too bright, making her blink. The microphone stand towered over her. Someone had to adjust it down to her height. 400 faces stared. Victoria's voice cut through the silence. No accompanist? She made a show of checking her notes. How brave or unprepared? Scattered laughs. Tiana's worn Goodwill sneakers squeaked on the stage floor. The sound carried through the silent auditorium. Mr. Harrison leaned forward. Name and song choice, sweetheart? Tiana's voice came out smaller than she wanted. My name is Tiana Turner. I'm 10 years old. She swallowed hard. I'm singing Rise Up by Andra Day. The auditorium went completely still. Someone in the back whispered, She's only 10? Victoria's smile turned condescending. That's quite an ambitious choice for someone your age, honey. And you're performing a cappella? This is a professional competition, not show and tell. Tiana looked directly at her. I know. That's why I'm here. A ripple of reaction, gasps, murmurs. This child had backbone. Christopher Hayes sat rigid in his judge's chair, both hands gripping the table edge so hard his knuckles had gone white. Something about the angle of Tiana's jaw, the set of her shoulders, the defiance in her eyes that was pure Diane. It hit him like a physical blow. Tiana closed her eyes, touched her chest where the marker words lived under the fabric, took one breath, two, then she sang. The first note filled the auditorium like a physical presence, pure, powerful, impossible from a 10-year-old's small frame. No backing music, no safety net, just her voice, raw and aching and somehow ancient, like she'd lived 100 years in 10. You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round. The audience went completely silent. Phones started coming up, recording. And you can't find the fighter, but I see it in you, so we gonna walk it out. Front row. A white woman who had pulled her daughter away from Tiana earlier now had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming. And move mountains. Victoria's smirk began to fade. We gonna walk it out." Mr. Harrison leaned forward, mouth slightly open. "And move mountains." Christopher Hayes's eyes filled with tears. He didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stared at this child, his child, pouring survival into sound. Tiana's voice cracked on the bridge. Not a mistake. Real emotion breaking through. She was singing about rising despite being broken, and she knew what broken meant. She'd watched her mama break every day for months. "I'll rise up! I'll rise like the day! I'll rise up! I'll rise unafraid!" Her voice built, impossibly higher. The hospital stairwell practice was paying off. Her tone had a natural resonance that no amount of money could buy. "I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again." Diane Turner sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, one hand pressed to her mouth. Her baby. Her beautiful, brave baby. Carol gripped her other hand, whispering, "Yes, baby. Yes." Christopher's shoulders began to shake. Tears fell openly down his face. He didn't wipe them. Couldn't move. His lips formed words silently. "Oh my God. That's my daughter." The final chorus. Tiana opened her eyes, looked directly at her mama, and let everything go. Every fear, every hunger pain. Every night wondering if morning would come and her mama would still be breathing. "And I'll rise up, high like the waves. I'll rise up in spite of the ache." She hit the final note and held it. 10 seconds. 11. 12. Pure, sustained, heartbreaking power from a 10-year-old child who had been singing in hospital stairwells to survive. When she released the note, the auditorium fell into absolute silence. 5 full seconds of stunned quiet. Then, eruption. The entire auditorium on its feet, screaming, crying, stamping. A standing ovation that shook the walls. Carol Bennett was shouting, "Yes, baby! Yes!" Diane tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. Carol caught her, held her up. Victoria sat frozen, face cycling through shock and something that looked like fear. Mr. Harrison had his hands in the air, tears streaming. Good Lord above!" Christopher Hayes stood, applauding so hard his hands hurt, face completely broken open, tears unchecked. He'd spent 20 years in the music industry. He'd heard every kind of talent. This wasn't talent. This was something else entirely. Tiana stood on the stage, breathing hard, confused by the reaction. She looked for her mama in the front row. Found her. They locked eyes. Diane mouthed, "I love you." Tiana mouthed back, "I love you more." Christopher watched this exchange and something inside him shattered. The scoring began. Victoria forced to judge, her voice tight. It was adequate for what it was, for a child, 7.0. The audience booed. Actual boos in a community talent show. Someone shouted, "That's racist!" Mr. Harrison turned to Victoria, genuinely angry. "Are you kidding? That was a 10, a perfect 10. That child is a miracle." Christopher stood, voice breaking. "I'm giving this an 11. I don't care if that's not protocol." He paused, struggling. "That performance was the most honest thing I've heard in 20 years in this industry. That little girl has a gift from God, 10.0. Average score, 9.3. First place after preliminaries." The auditorium exploded again. Tiana, small and overwhelmed, was being hugged by Carol and her mama and strangers. People were crying, phones everywhere, already posting, already sharing. Victoria stood abruptly and left the judge's table, her face white. Backstage, she pulled aside Brian Michaels, the competition coordinator. They disappeared into an office. Through the small window, people could see them talking intensely, Victoria showing Brian something on her phone. Nobody noticed except Christopher Hayes, who had followed them. He stood in the hallway outside the office, listening. Victoria's voice carried through the door. She's been posting covers online since she was 7. No licensing. That's copyright infringement. File the ethics complaint. We can disqualify her before finals. Christopher's hands curled into fists. Finals were scheduled for next Thursday, 7 days away. Diane's surgery was scheduled for 18 days away, and Christopher had just heard Victoria plot to destroy his daughter's only chance to save her mother's life. The mother he had abandoned had. The woman he'd left with nothing. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. The video hit the internet before Tiana even left the building. 10-year-old stuns judges with emotional performance, read the first headline. Then another. Child's voice makes celebrity judge cry. Within an hour, 3 different angles of Tiana's performance were circulating on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. By midnight, the main video had 500,000 views. By morning, 2.3 million. Had Riverside Girl started trending. Then, Masher 10-year-old powerhouse. Then someone made the connection. #wait that's River Kid, the anonymous SoundCloud singer people had been following for years. The comments came in waves. Who is this child? Someone sign her now! I'm literally sobbing at my desk. The judge crying, Christopher Hayes never shows emotion like that. Wait, she's been practicing since age 7? That's dedication. This is what raw talent looks like. No coaching, no production, just soul. Tiana woke up Friday morning to find her shared SoundCloud account had jumped from 50,000 followers to 420,000. At school, kids she'd never spoken to mobbed her in the hallway. Teachers cried. The principal called her to the office, not for punishment, but because the school phone had been ringing all morning with media requests. Madison Mitchell found her after school, 8th graders parting to let her through. Enjoy the attention while it lasts, she said, voice dripping with practiced sweetness. Finals are different. That's where trained performers separate from lucky flukes. Tiana said nothing, just walked away. That night, Diane's GoFundMe page saw a surge of donations. Strangers sending $10, $20, $50. The total climbed from $3,200 to $12,500. Still not enough, not even close. But it was hope. Real, tangible hope. Diane cried herself to sleep that night, one hand holding Tiana's, the other pressed to her chest where the tumor was growing. 14 days until surgery. 7 days until finals. Victoria Mitchell wasn't crying. She was planning. Saturday morning, she sat in her pristine kitchen, scrolling through Tiana's SoundCloud account on her phone. 53 cover songs, posted between ages 7 and 10. Not a single licensing agreement in sight. She texted Brian Michaels, "We need to talk. Now." They met in his office at the community center. Victoria slid her phone across the desk. She's been posting copyrighted covers for 3 years, no licenses. Her mother clearly wasn't supervising her internet activity. It's an ethics violation. Brian stared at the screen, uncomfortable. Victoria, she's a kid. Those are practice videos. Rules are rules. Section 7.3 of the competition guidelines. Contestants must demonstrate ethical conduct and legal compliance. If we file a complaint, she's disqualified. Madison wins by default. That little girl made me cry, Victoria. That little girl broke the law. Victoria's voice went cold. Madison has trained for 8 years. We've invested thousands, tens of thousands in her coaching. And some child from Section 8 shows up with no training and steals it with one emotional performance? No. File the complaint. This feels wrong. Do you want to remain coordinator next year? Brian looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed and opened his laptop. Fine. I'll draft the ethics complaint. But I'm noting for the record, this is cruel. Cruel is letting an untrained child steal opportunities from dedicated performers. What they didn't know. Christopher Hayes stood in the hallway outside, having arrived early to drop off some paperwork. He'd heard every word. His phone was already out, already recording. That night, Christopher sat in his hotel room, hands shaking, staring at photos on his phone. He'd found Diane's Facebook. Barely used, but there. Profile picture of her and Tiana, dated 2 months ago. Diane's head was wrapped in a bright scarf, her smile tired but genuine. Tiana hugged her from behind, both of them laughing at something off camera. The caption, "My whole heart. Tiana's first day of 4th grade. So proud of my baby girl." Christopher zoomed in on Tiana's face, his eyes, his bone structure, his smile, his daughter. He clicked through to Diane's GoFundMe page. The description made him physically ill. Single mom diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Needs surgery within 3 weeks or tumor becomes inoperable. Insurance denied claim. Cost, $52,000. My daughter Tiana, 10, is trying to help by competing in talent show. Any support deeply appreciated. God bless. Posted photo. Diane, bald from chemotherapy, so thin her hospital gown hung off her shoulders. Tiana beside her, small hand holding her mama's, trying to smile for the camera. Christopher had abandoned them 11 years ago, left them to poverty, left them to struggle. And now his daughter, his 10-year-old daughter, was singing to save her mother's life because he'd been too much of a coward to pay child support. The memory hit him like a fist. Diane at 20, standing in his apartment doorway. "Chris, I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. His face, panic, not joy. "I can't do this. I just got signed to the label. This is everything I've worked for. A kid will destroy it all." "I'm not asking you to give up music. Just be here. Be a father." "I can't. I won't." Her face breaking. "So you're just leaving?" "I'll send money." He never did. Christopher looked at the GoFundMe total, $14,800 of $52,000 raised. He looked at the recording on his phone, Victoria plotting to disqualify Tiana. He looked at his bank account balance. Then he started typing emails. By Monday, Tiana's preliminary performance had hit 4.2 million views across all platforms. News outlets picked up the story. 10-year-old's viral performance has America in tears. A local ABC and NBC affiliates called, requesting interviews. A radio station in Chicago played her SoundCloud covers during morning drive time. Let Tiana Sing started trending nationally when someone posted about her mother's cancer, her GoFundMe, her 8 months saving lemonade money for the entry fee. The narrative was too perfect, too heartbreaking, too real. Poor black girl singing to save her dying mother, almost dismissed by a racist coordinator, proving everyone wrong with pure talent. America loved an underdog, especially an underdog this small and this brave. Celebrity musicians started weighing in. A Grammy winner retweeted her video. "This child has more soul in one note than most artists have in their entire career." Tiana's SoundCloud followers hit 500,000. Diane's GoFundMe climbed to $18,200. Still not enough, but closer. So much closer. At the hospital pediatric ward Tuesday afternoon, Tiana sang to the children like always. But this time, parents recognized her, asked for photos, asked for autographies. One mother broke down crying, "My son watches your video every night before bed. It helps him forget the pain." Carol found Tiana in the stairwell afterward, looking overwhelmed. "You okay, baby?" "I just wanted to help Mama. I didn't want all this." "I know. But you know what you did? You gave people hope. That matters." That evening, Tiana received a direct message on the SoundCloud account from an anonymous user. You have a rare gift. Don't let them silence it. No matter what happens at finals, you are already a singer. Stay strong. C. Tiana showed it to her mama. Who do you think it's from? Diane stared at the message for a long time, something shifting behind her eyes, but she just kissed Tiana's forehead. Someone who sees your light, baby. Wednesday night, 11 days until surgery, 2 days until finals. Tiana practiced in front of their bathroom mirror, her reflection looking back with Diane's determination and someone else's eyes. She was ready. She had no idea that tomorrow morning Victoria would try to destroy everything. Thursday morning, 9 a.m., day of finals. Diane's phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line made her stomach drop. Urgent. Ethics violation complaint. Response required by 2 p.m. Her hands shook as she opened it. Contestant number 32, Tiana Turner, age 10, engaged in copyright infringement through unlicensed cover songs posted on SoundCloud under alias Riverkid from ages 7 to 10. Per competition rules, Section 7.3, contestants must demonstrate ethical conduct and legal compliance. Additionally, evidence suggests lack of parental supervision of minors' online activity. Recommend immediate disqualification pending documentation of proper licensing for all posted content. Deadline for documentation, 2 p.m. today, June 15th. Finals begin 7 p.m. Finals. Signed, Brian Michaels, Competition Coordinator. Diane read it 3 times, each time understanding less and more simultaneously. They were using her baby's practice, 3 years of a child finding her voice, as a weapon. She called Tiana's school immediately. Emergency. I need my daughter. Now. 20 minutes later, they sat at their small kitchen table, Tiana crying, Diane trying to stay calm while her own hands trembled. Mama, I didn't know. I was just practicing. I never made money. I just wanted... Baby, I know. This isn't your fault. But Diane's mind was racing. How did they even find out? Who looked up a 10-year-old's practice videos? Who cared enough to destroy a child's chance? She knew the answer. Victoria. Diane called the competition office. Brian answered on the 3rd ring, his voice guilty before he even said hello. Ms. Turner, look, it's policy. She was 7 when she started posting. A child. She was practicing. I understand, but the rules require proper licensing for all posted content. You have until 2 p.m. to provide documentation proving all 53 covers were legally licensed or she's disqualified. I'm sorry. You're not sorry. Victoria put you up to this, didn't she? Silence on the line. Then, I have to follow the rules, Ms. Turner. This is because she's black and poor and she beat your favorite. Don't lie to me. 2 p.m., Ms. Turner. Documentation required. He hung up. Diane stared at her phone. It was 9:47 a.m. She had 4 hours and 13 minutes to obtain legal documentation that couldn't exist, for a child's practice videos posted before she even understood what copyright meant. She called free legal aid. Voicemail. 3-week wait for appointments. She searched Google frantically. Child posted covers online legal help. The results were contradictory, confusing, useless. She posted in 3 Facebook mom groups. Urgent. My 10-year-old being disqualified from talent competition over covers she posted as a 7-year-old practicing. Is this legal? Please help. Responses trickled in. They're technically right, but morally wrong. You need a lawyer. This happens. Competitions protect their favorites. That's so wrong. Where's the competition? I'll come protest. But nobody had solutions. Nobody had documentation. Nobody could help. Victoria sat in her pristine living room, texting Madison. Crisis averted, honey. You'll be competing for first place tonight unopposed. Start getting ready. Madison stared at her phone, something uncomfortable squirming in her chest. Mom, what did you do? I simply enforced the rules, sweetheart. Some people think they can bypass years of proper training and investment with one emotional performance. Not on my watch. She's 10, Mom, and she was incredible. She's 10 and her mother let her break the law online for 3 years. Consequences, darling. Welcome to the real world. Madison didn't respond. She'd watched Tiana's video 17 times, had cried during 12 of them. She knew what real talent looked like. This wasn't fair. But her mother's word was law. 11:30 a.m., 3.5 hours until deadline. Mr. Harrison, the judge and music teacher, heard about the complaint from another teacher. He immediately called Christopher Hayes. Chris, did you hear about the Turner girl? They're trying to disqualify her over childhood practice videos. It's Victoria. She's protecting Madison. Christopher was already in his car, already driving. What's the deadline? 2 p.m. She needs documentation she can't possibly have. What's the office address? Chris, what are you... Send me the address. Now. 12 minutes later, Christopher pulled into the community center parking lot, tires screeching. He'd been up all night. His eyes were red. His suit was wrinkled. He looked half crazy. He felt half crazy. Because somewhere in that building, his 10-year-old daughter was about to lose her only chance to save her mother's life. And he'd be damned if he'd let her face this alone, twice. 1:35 p.m. 25 minutes until deadline. Christopher burst through the community center office door without knocking. Diane and Tiana sat in plastic chairs against the wall, both looking defeated. Tiana's eyes were swollen from crying. Diane held her daughter tight, one hand stroking her hair, whispering something Christopher couldn't hear. Victoria stood by Brian's desk, arms crossed, Victoria's smile on her face. They all turned when Christopher entered. I'm halting this disqualification, Christopher said. His voice was cold, controlled, deadly. Effective immediately. Victoria's smile faltered. Excuse me? This is an internal competition matter. You're a guest judge. You don't have authority. I'm also a lawyer. Christopher pulled out his phone, opened a folder of documents his assistant had emailed him at 3 a.m. Entertainment law, UCLA Law School, member of the California Bar. Let me educate you on what you're attempting here. He turned to Brian, ignoring Victoria completely. Non-commercial cover songs posted by minors for practice purposes fall under fair use provisions, 17 U.S.C. Section 107. No licensing required if no monetization occurred, which it didn't. Brian opened his mouth. Christopher cut him off. Applying adult contract law standards to a child aged 7 to 10, legally indefensible, ethically reprehensible. She was 7. She couldn't legally consent to terms of service even if she'd tried. He pulled up another document. Selective enforcement. You didn't vet other contestants' childhood social media. That's discriminatory practice, actionable under civil rights law. Victoria's face started going pale. Filing ethics complaints without proper investigation that specifically target a black contestant? Christopher's voice went quieter, more dangerous. That's grounds for federal discrimination lawsuit. I will personally fund it. I have 5 attorneys on retainer and unlimited resources. He held up his phone, hit play on the recording. Victoria's voice filled the office. Rules are rules. Madison has trained for 8 years. File the complaint. Victoria's face went white. You recorded. That's illegal. California is a 2-party consent state, but there's an exception for documenting illegal activity. Discrimination is illegal. Congratulations, you documented yourself. He turned back to Brian. I have my law firm on speed dial. I'm prepared to file federal discrimination suit, contact every competition sponsor with this recording, and alert national media that this competition is targeting a 10-year-old black girl for practicing music online as a child. His eyes were ice. Your Arts Council funding? Gone by Monday. Your reputation? Destroyed. Every sponsor? Pulled. This community center? Liable for millions in damages. Tiana watched this stranger defend her, confusion clear on her small face. Who are you? Christopher looked at her. For one moment, his controlled facade cracked. Pain flashed across his face. Someone who should have been here a long time ago. Before Tiana could ask what that meant, Christopher turned back to Brian. Withdraw the complaint. Now. Or I start making calls. The silence in the office was suffocating. Brian's hands shook as he clicked his mouse. Complaint withdrawn. Contestant 32 is cleared to perform tonight. In writing. Brian typed frantically, printed, signed, handed the paper to Diane with trembling hands. I'm sorry, Ms. Turner. I'm truly sorry. I should never have— You should never have listened to a racist, Christopher said flatly. He turned to Victoria. If you attempt any further interference with this contestant, I will end you. Professionally. Personally, legally. Are we clear? Victoria said nothing, just grabbed her purse and fled. Christopher watched her go, then turned to Diane and Tiana. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. Tiana had his eyes, his chin, his exact bone structure. Diane looked older, harder, worn down by years of struggle, but still beautiful, still fierce. Diane stared at him, really stared. Her eyes narrowed. Christopher? He froze. Mama? Tiana looked between them, confused. You know him? Diane's face cycled through shock, recognition, rage. Get out! Diane, Get out! Her voice shook. You don't get to do this. Not now. Not after— She couldn't finish, just held Tiana tighter. Christopher looked at his daughter one more time. Your performance was extraordinary, he said softly. Good luck tonight. Then he left before he fell apart in front of them. Outside in the hallway, he pressed his back against the wall and tried to breathe. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold his phone. He'd just saved his daughter, but he still hadn't told her who he was. Meanwhile, word was spreading. Carol had organized the hospital staff. The Riverside Apartments neighbors had created a Facebook event. Support Tiana Turner, finals night. The Black Church Youth Choir was mobilizing. By 5 p.m., there was a line around the community center block. 800 people trying to get into a 400-seat auditorium. Hashtag Let Tiana Sing was trending nationally, number 3 on Twitter. Victoria saw the crowd from her car and realized she'd lost before the competition even started. 7 p.m. The auditorium was chaos controlled by fire marshal regulations. 400 seats packed, 300 more in an overflow room with a live stream, another 150 outside with speakers. News cameras lined the back wall, local ABC, NBC, even a CNN stringer who'd driven 2 hours. The energy in the room was electric, protective, hopeful. Front row center, Diane Turner, so thin her dress hung off her frame, headscarf wrapped carefully, makeup covering the worst of her pallor. Carol sat beside her, holding her hand. Rows 2 through 10. Riverside neighbors, hospital staff in scrubs, church youth choir members wearing matching Justice for Tiana t-shirts someone had printed that afternoon. The back rows, supporters from the viral video, strangers who'd driven hours, media, people recording everything. 5 finalists had made it through. The performance order was random draw. Madison Mitchell drew number 3. Tiana drew number 5. Last. The pressure of going last after 2 rounds of viral videos and national attention would crush most adult performers. For a 10-year-old, it should have been impossible. But Tiana had already lost everything once today. She had nothing left to lose. Madison performed third. The Greatest by Sia, with full production, backing tracks, 2 backup dancers, coordinated lighting, a dress that cost $2,000. Technically flawless, emotionally bankrupt. She was performing for applause, not from the heart, hitting marks, executing choreography. Perfect and completely forgettable. The audience applauded politely. Judges scored. Mr. Harrison gave 8.5. Victoria recused herself as Madison's mother. Christopher gave 7.5. Technically proficient, but art should make you feel something. And Madison's face crumpled slightly. Average, 8.0. The other 3 contestants ranged from 7.0 to 8.2. Good, not transcendent. Tiana needed 8.1 to win. Backstage, she stood alone, breathing slowly. Her thrift store dress was the same one from preliminaries. Her sneakers still worn. No costume change. No production team. Just her and the marker words on her palm that had faded to ghosts. Final contestant, Tiana Turner. The auditorium erupted before she even appeared. Standing ovation for her entrance. Chants of, "Tiana, Tiana!" The church choir singing, "That's my sister." Tiana walked on stage, and this time, something was different. She walked taller, shoulders back, head up, like Carol said, like she'd already won. The microphone was adjusted to her height. The spotlight softer. The technician had done it on purpose. She looked at her mama in the front row. Diane was crying already, both hands pressed to her mouth. "I'm singing Stand Up by Cynthia Erivo," Tiana said, her voice clear and steady. "For my mama. For everyone who told me I wasn't enough." She looked directly at Victoria. "And for everyone who said I was." She looked at Christopher. Victoria shifted uncomfortably. Christopher stopped breathing. Then Tiana closed her eyes and began. If her preliminary performance was lightning, this was a hurricane. The opening was soft, vulnerable. "I'm gonna stand up." Each word weighted with 10 years of watching her mother sacrifice everything. The verse built gradually, her small voice somehow filling every corner of the space with impossible power. Diane sobbed in the front row. Carol held her upright. Christopher's hands gripped the judge's table, tears already falling. The church choir swayed, some already weeping. Then the chorus hit. Tiana's voice exploded. "Like I've never lived before." The note she held, 12 seconds of sustained, perfect, soul-destroying power. People rose from their seats mid-performance. The church choir spontaneously harmonized, "Stand up! Stand up!" Christopher broke. Face in his hands, shoulders heaving, audible sobs, not caring who saw. Even Victoria's face showed shock, reluctant awe, something that might have been respect. The bridge. Tiana slowed, sang directly to her mama, "What if I fall? What if I break?" Diane mouthed back, "You won't fall, baby. Mama's got you." The cameras captured this exchange. It would go viral within an hour. The final chorus. Tiana poured everything, every eviction notice, every watered-down soup dinner, every night her mama cried, into the crescendo. The final note. 15 seconds of sustained perfection that made professional singers weep. When she released it, 5 seconds of cathedral silence, then pandemonium. 1,200 people on their feet, screaming, crying, stomping. The building shook. Outside, people heard it and cheered through speakers. The scoring, Mr. Harrison, voice shaking. That wasn't singing. That was prophecy. 10.0. Christopher, barely able to speak. "I've worked with legends, Grammy winners, platinum artists. I have never heard anything like what I just witnessed. This is divine. 10.0. Victoria didn't score, just sat, pale and defeated. Average 10.0, perfect score. Tiana Turner wins. The announcer could barely be heard over the celebration. Your Riverside Community Talent Show champion, Tiana Turner. The oversized check, $50,000. Tiana held it with small hands, crying, "Mama can have her surgery. She's going to live." In the chaos, Christopher stood at the edge of the stage, watching Diane being helped forward by Carol. It was time. The post-show chaos swirled around them, media, supporters, strangers taking photos. Tiana stood center stage holding her oversized check, overwhelmed, searching the crowd for her mama. Diane was being helped through the crowd by Carol, too weak to push through alone. Christopher intercepted them at the stage steps. "Diane." Diane froze, turned, saw him up close for the first time in 11 years. Her face cycled through shock to recognition to pure fury. "What the hell are you doing here?" Her voice shook with rage. "You have no right! Not after—" "I know I have no right. But she deserves to know." "Know what?" Diane's voice rose. People started turning, sensing drama. "That her father abandoned us? That he left me pregnant and broke and alone? That he chose his career over his child? She's better off not knowing you exist." Tiana pushed through the crowd toward them, small and confused. "Mama? What's going on? Who is this?" The question hung in the air. Christopher knelt down to Tiana's eye level. His eyes, her eyes, were red from crying. "My name is Christopher Hayes, and I'm your father." Tiana's face went blank. "What?" "No!" Diane grabbed Tiana's shoulder. "No, you don't get to do this. Not here. Not now." But Christopher kept looking at Tiana. "You have my eyes, my voice. 11 years ago, your mother and I were together. When she got pregnant, I ran. I chose my career. I abandoned you both." His voice cracked. "And I have hated myself every single day since." Tiana stepped back, shaking her head. "You're lying." My father isn't," Mama said. "Your mama was protecting you from the truth." Christopher's tears fell freely. "That I was a coward. That I left you with nothing. That I promised to send money and never did." "Why?" Tiana's voice was so small. "Why would you leave?" "Because I was 24 and scared and selfish. Because I thought my music career was more important than being your father." He looked at Diane. "More important than the woman I loved." Diane made a sound like she'd been punched. Tiana's tears started. "You're telling me this now? After the biggest moment of my life, you show up and tell me you left us?" "Because I couldn't stay silent anymore. When Victoria tried to disqualify you, I had to protect you. It's 11 years too late, but I had to do something." "You were the one who stopped them?" Christopher nodded. "You don't get to be a hero." Tiana's voice broke. "You don't get to swoop in and act like you saved me. My mama saved me. She's the one who raised me, who worked herself sick for me. You were nothing. You are nothing." "You're right." Christopher pulled out his phone, showed the wire transfer. $52,000 to Diane Turner, medical payment, status, paid in full. "Your mother's surgery is covered. I called the hospital 2 hours ago. They confirmed. She's scheduled for tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Diane gasped, hand over her mouth. "I can't give you back 11 years, Christopher said, but I can give you your mother's life." Tiana looked at the phone screen, at the number, at her mama's face, back at Christopher. "Mama's surgery is paid for? Every penny. You don't need the prize money for that anymore. Use it for your future, for college, for music, for whatever you want." Tiana's small body started shaking. The check fell from her hands. Carol caught her as she collapsed, crying. Diane stood frozen, torn between rage and relief, unable to process. Christopher stayed kneeling, watching his daughter fall apart, knowing he'd caused this. All of this. 11 years of absence culminating in this moment. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quietly. "I just needed you to know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Tiana looked up at him through tears. "I don't forgive you." "That's fair. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't." "That's more than fair." "But," she wiped her face, "thank you for helping Mama." Christopher nodded, not trusting his voice. Carol helped Tiana stand. Diane wrapped her arms around her daughter, both of them crying. Christopher backed away, giving them space. He'd saved his daughter's chance. Paid for his sins in the only way he knew how. Met his child for the first time and the millionth time simultaneously. It wasn't redemption, but it was something. It was a start. 6 months later. The photo on Diane Turner's Facebook showed two women smiling in autumn sunlight. Diane's hair had grown back in soft curls. Her cheeks had color. She wore a cancer survivor shirt and looked 10 years younger. Tiana stood beside her, taller now, arms wrapped around her mama, both of them laughing at something off camera. Caption: "Miracles are real. God is good. My daughter saved my life. Cancer-free. Surgery successful. Clean scans for 6 months straight." Tiana's debut single, a studio recording of her Rise Up performance, hit 52 million views. A record deal followed, negotiated by Diane with creative control, education requirements, and mandatory therapy stipend written into every clause. She toured regionally on weekends, age-appropriate schedule, still in 5th grade, homeschooled part-time. She performed at children's hospitals monthly for free, sat with the sick kids, sang to them like they'd sung to her when she practiced in those stairwells. 15% of her proceeds went to pediatric cancer research. Christopher and Tiana met monthly, supervised by Diane. Awkward coffee shop meetings where Tiana called him Christopher or Mr. Hayes, and they talked about music, school, anything but the 11 years of absence. "I'm not ready to call you Dad," Tiana told him once. "I understand. Maybe someday, maybe never. I'll be here either way." "I don't forgive you yet." "That's fair." But she let him buy her a guitar for her 11th birthday. Small progress, painful progress, progress nonetheless. Madison Mitchell surprised everyone by DMing Tiana. "My mom was wrong. You deserved to win. I'm sorry." They weren't friends, but they were civil. Performed together once for charity. Mutual respect from opposite sides of privilege. Victoria was removed from the Arts Council after the recording went public, lost her coordinator position, faced no criminal charges, but social consequences were swift and permanent. The final shot. Tiana singing in a hospital pediatric ward, surrounded by bald children with bright eyes, all of them holding hands, all of them singing together. Have you ever been counted out before you started? Told you weren't worthy? Remember this. The voice that matters most is the one you find when everyone says be silent. Tiana found hers in a hospital stairwell and on a stage in front of the father who abandoned her. Where will you find yours? Now, real talk. If you were Tiana, could you forgive him? Could you ever call him Dad? Drop your answer below. I'm reading every single one. And hey, rewatch at 1849. Christopher's face when Tiana walks on stage for finals. There's a micro-expression that changes everything. Only sharp eyes catch it. This story broke me while writing it. If it moved you even half as much, hit subscribe. I've got hundreds more like this. You don't want to miss what's next.